Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and comrades, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. This is Kenyan Revolutionary for another quick, short video about this topic right here that I'm about to present to you. Like I said, I won't be long here. Then me parara parara, like forgive me. But anyway, like I said, I will be very brief, and today I mean it. I will be very brief while I talk to you about what the topic is, which is Ruto plus the political class are Jedi mind tricking the Kenyan youth. I know you're sitting there asking me, what do you mean by Jedi mind tricking the Kenyan youth? I will explain to you very quickly because it's not complicated. Now, there are three things I want to really touch on very quick. Number one, I want to address something that I see one of the influencers talked about when he said, you know, uh, Amenya, I'm talking about Amenya. Amenya is the guy who actually exposed the Adani deal, if you guys remember that. And he, on X, I kind of challenged his position. Well, he wrote a piece, I think, on Standard or Nation, or one of the rags, where he was arguing that, uh, you know, the ballot is a revolutionary tool that is at our arsenal. We can use it to actually remove Ruto, and that the protest is not the only way or the way that we should use, or a popular revolution is not um, the only effective way where we can actualize change in Kenya. And I beg to differ with that position, and I explained why. You can go read his piece. It's in his X page. Nelson Amenya, I think that's his name. I forgot. Maybe I got his first name wrong. I think it's Amenya, the guy who exposed the Adani deal. Okay. So anyway, he gives the example of Senegal and all these places, but my response was very particular to Kenya, given the Kenyan context. Okay, we have a history of, huge voter turnout. We've had a history of obvious elections being rigged in favor of the president that is in power, the person who's holding the instruments of power of the nation, okay, who rigged himself and refused to cede power. The argument here it is, let me help you very quickly. Like I said, I'll hit the points very quickly without a lot of fluff. Nelson Amenya argues that the youth should go out and register to vote in droves. Watu wajitokeze wakachukue kura so that when it comes 2027, we can overwhelmingly remove Ruto through the ballot. That's basically his premise. And he said, he gives his examples why he thinks that's the best way, we can do it, okay? And my argument is, of course, when I challenged him on that, he came back and said that, it was, I don't know, he gave me some figures about the low turnout in voting during the last elections and the previous elections, where the youth are always encouraged to go and wachukue kura and wapige kura, but they usually don't turn out in the day of elections. And I'm challenging that premise by first questioning that that alibi that we are always given by the rigging regime. After every elections, yule mtu ameshindwa, his parrots always go to media stations and tell us that, oh, so and so Ruto, like the last time we were being told that Ruto was traversing the whole country, he was walking around, he had an aggressive campaign, he was encouraging people from his strongholds to actually vote and register to vote. That's why he actually defeated Raila Odinga in the 2022 elections. Okay, the same thing we were being told in 2007 when Kibaki lost overwhelmingly. But again, the Martha Karuas then and others were trying to convince us that the voter turnout registration in Mount Kenya region was so high that it actually balanced out all the Azimio, sorry, the ODM strongholds. I don't know if it was called by then or ODM or whatever it was called by the back then. Okay, NASA. That's actually, so the argument was that Kibaki had so many registered voters who turned out in numbers and doubled or tripled the amount of votes that Raila voters who registered and voted on the same day, they were arguing that Raila's strongholds had low turnout. And I've often argued that this is the same trick, nonsensical reasoning that we gulp down our throats and our minds and digest it and spew it out in public platforms. We buy into this nonsensical narrative. And it's historically, we known the western region of Kenya, whether it's Nyanza province or Western province, which are historically the opposition, so to speak, okay? During elections, they always, don't you find it funny that they always come out and tell us that, oh, the voter turnout in Nyanza, the voter turnout in Western province was really low. That's why they lost the elections, okay? Now, I gave the 2007 example because everyone who has a sane mind, who has logic and can think clearly, a sober mind, knows that Kibaki only had the central province as a stronghold in the 2007 elections. He lost. The rest of the country voted him out overwhelmingly. Okay, that is understood. It's not up for a debate. I'm sorry. Do not debate with me or with anybody else because it's not worth it. Those are stone cold facts, okay? But what the Kibaki apologists like Martha Karua and the rest of them were trying to convince us that Kibaki actually, people in Central Province turned out in numbers, and people in ODM strongholds at the time in 2007 walilewa and they did not show up during the voting day. And that's the narrative that we are always being told. Now, listen in. That's why I'm not buying this whole argument that the youth don't always vote. The youth always don't turn out during the election day at the polling station. Ati wanaenda wanalewa and wanafanya, they are apathetic, or there's apathy, voter apathy among the youth. It's a narrative that is not true and it needs to be debunked today here on this channel. And that's what I'm trying to say. Now, here's the trick now. Here is the trick, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and comrades. Now, you can see this aggressive campaign by every politician. Members of this political class in Kenya are out there enthusiastically telling us, vijana, Gen Z, enda mkaregister and vote. At the same time, we are not being given the figures of how many people have actually registered to vote. At the same time, they've already started countering, having a counter narrative, the same narrative that I just talked about, that, oh, there's very low turnout as far as the people who are registering to vote. Okay? I'm going to entertain this voting nonsense just for a minute, just to show you how useless this whole ballot revolutionary toolkit that Amenya is trying to convince us it is. It's not. It's not going to work. Voting is a sham in Kenya. Elections are a sham in Kenya. You cannot convince yourself or convince anyone with a sane mind that you can go to election, cast a ballot, have Ruto's boys at the IBC count fairly and verifiably to see who won the elections. That's just you're not living in planet Earth. You're living somewhere in Pluto, if Pluto still exists, okay? So what I'm trying to say is this. The Jedi mind trick is this at this point. While this political class, Ruto and his cohorts, I told you about the political parties. All these political parties, whether it's Jubilee, whether it's ODM, UDA, Safina, all of these people, PLP, Wiper, these people are forming these political parties and presenting themselves as presidential candidates, not because they are going to win, not because they believe they are going to win. It is because after the chaos that will ensue after the electoral process is concluded in 2027, where Ruto shall be declared the president, there shall be chaos. Then they shall follow a what? Negotiation, where everyone, all these people with these political parties, Jubilee, whatever, Safina, all of them, they will be apportioned, okay, positions, political position or appointments, or they shall negotiate for a deal where the constitution will be changed and position shall be formed in order to do what? To accommodate everybody. So these guys know that 2027 will be messy. It will be rigged. Oscar Sudi and the rest have told us that kura kama haijatosha watajaza, which is a blatant affront to the Kenyan people. Not only that, they're actually telling you the script that we are not going to lose, whether you like it or not. We shall make sure we do everything in our power to make sure that we vote. That Ruto wins. That's basically what Oscar Sudi and the rest are saying. Now, coming back to the Jedi mind trick, I'm telling you, if you're paying attention now, everyone and his mama who is connected to this Ruto government is strongly advising the youth to go register and vote. My question is, why can't IBC, before even IBC tell us how many people have registered to vote, the number one thing that the government should actually tell us is, what's the consensus? Sorry, not the consensus, but the census. Okay? How many people, the population of people we have in different regions, all regions of within Kenya, whether it's Northeastern, Nyanza province, Central province, Rift Valley province. I'm going back to the provinces. Sorry, I'm old school. Okay? Coastal province. Can we get a census, an updated one that tells us how many people, what's the population in a certain region, and what's the population of adults who are capable of voting, qualified to vote? I think 18 and above is the cutoff age. If you're 18 and above, you can go vote, right? We need to know what the census are. How many people do we have in Nairobi province, Central province, all these counties? Okay? And we need a real update of how many people are actually doing what? Registering to vote. Because, like I told you, this is a trick that is being used on the Kenyan people, youth in particular. They're trying to Jedi mind trick you to think that you can go out there and vote Ruto out. And I've been saying this. Ruto is just the mascot of the underlying Kenyan problems. Removing Ruto is not a solution. Because today, if you go and remove Ruto and vote him out in 2027, look at the alternatives that you have who are running for president. Can you tell me with a straight face, without batting an eyelid, and tell me that Jimmy Wanjigi, Matiang'i, Gachagua, Kalonzo, Martha Karua, Raila Odinga, and all this rest of these clowns that are running for president in Kenya, are they much better than Ruto? Look at their resume. Are they not the same folks who are there, who are nurtured politically, okay, baby fed, learned how to walk and commit economic crimes by Moi government, by Kibaki's government, by Uhuru's government, and here they are presenting themselves as the Messiah that will save Kenya from the silt that we are sitting on. That's what I'm trying to ask you, the youth. This is the trick that they're placing before you. They are convincing you, they're trying to pretend that they want you to go and register to vote. Listen to me. I want you to get the picture, because I might not be that articulate, but I will try my best. Number one, listen to me. Number one, we do not know the census, the number of people that are old enough to vote in every corner of Kenya. A current census, numbers, population numbers. We've been growing. Look at Northeastern. We have Somalians, you know, whether it's in Isli, whether in Northeastern, whatever the case is, they're a growing demographic, ethnicity. Okay? Western, one of the biggest, you know, voting bloc in Kenya. How many people are there? How many people who are adults who are capable of, in the voting age, 18 and above? Nyanza province, Rift Valley, Central province, which is also densely populated. All this coastal region, okay? We do not have those numbers. Nobody is telling you how many people we have as far as population is concerned. We're still going by the census that were taken, I don't know, 10 years ago, whatever the case is. That's number one. Number two, so far, since all this chukua kura and vote, what are the updated numbers of people who have actually registered to vote? You're not being told that. But here they're telling you this already. They've already come up with a narrative that there's very low turnout as far as the youth are not registering to vote. So how do they know that the youth are not registering to vote if they don't have the numbers to go by? We don't even know the number of people we have in certain regions, the current census, the number of population in a certain area. For example, Mombasa, coastal region, province. I'm just using that as an example, okay? But they're already telling you the youth are not, there's voter apathy. Hakuna mtu ana register to. You see what I'm saying? But here they are, all of them, they're speaking in unison. That's why I told you, be very, very wary with these folks when they are all talking with one tone, telling you, go and register to vote. I told you these political parties are a scam. These people are eyeing post-elections arrangement. They are not looking to win the presidency or to remove Ruto. And like I told you, that's number one. While they're telling you to go vote, they're also telling you at the same time, there's very low voter turnout, registration, as far as within the youth. Because they're telling you that 75% or 65% of Kenyan population is the youth. Okay? But they're telling you, those are the guys who are not voting. And remember, these are the guys who are actually politically motivated. These are the guys who went to the streets for the finance bill. Okay? But they're telling you these guys are not. So is there not any kind of there's a disconnect there? A population that is very, very active politically. These are the guys who went and rejected the finance bill in 2024. Okay? We remember June 25th. But now we are told they're not enthusiastic about registering to vote. But again, if you ask, what's the current census of a certain section of Kenya, or in general, the whole country? We don't know how many people have registered to vote. We don't know the number of people because the population have changed, but we are not being told the real numbers, the current numbers of people who have voted, or the current number of a population of a region. But they're telling you there's low turnout in registration, voter registration. Isn't there a disconnect in between there? You see what I'm saying? But they're busy telling you to go and vote. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is because of two things, and I will reiterate them very quickly so that you understand what I'm saying, just to go about and tell you. I started by telling you about 2007, when Kibaki was very unpopular and was actually voted out, and he refused to cede power. But then later, for his apologists, they came up with this argument that people in Raila's stronghold, so to speak, had lower voter turnout. That was their reason. That's how they were trying to justify how they so-called won. Why did Kivuitu, alijificha kwa basement somewhere there when he was reading the electoral results? The point is this, ladies and gentlemen. The point is this, not without using so many words. You will never get any real change or vote in a real representative who has integrity, who respects the rule of law, who respects the will of Kenyans through the ballot. The ballot is not a revolutionary tool because the IBC has been compromised, and the alternatives, the people who are presenting themselves as alternative to Ruto, are nothing but Ruto's cousins, politically speaking. They are corrupt, they are criminals, they are tribalists, they're engaged in different kind of weird business. We have their record. You understand what I'm saying? So they are not an alternative. So when someone like Nelson Amenya comes out and tells you that the ballot box is a revolutionary tool, how are you going to use this revolutionary tool to bring the presidential candidate that you want? Because whoever we are being presented with, the alternative that we are being presented with are nothing that are conjoined twins with Ruto. Politically speaking, they're no different. I told you there's no difference between Ruto and Kenyatta. Uhuru. Ruto's government is an extension of Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure. So that leaves us with one more option. Okay? Because I've explained to you how this trick is being played. Listen to me. The reason why these politicians and the political class, Ruto, Raila, Karua, Musyoka, Gachagua, the reason why they want to go to the ballot, why they want elections, is because elections is the only way they can guarantee they can control the process and get the outcome that they want. Let me tell you something. Ruto did not win by an accident. Some of you think that Ruto alishinda the oligarchs in 2022, or sijui Uhuru was okay with that because Uhuru and Raila were defeated. No. This was a long con game. None of these people, if it is through the elections, they are not there by accident. They are handpicked to be there. Now they might fight easy maandamano ambao unaona wanapigania. These maandamano are basically just them fighting for positions. Hey, I want my people to be in here so I can also get some money out of this government. If taxpayers money ambayo tunatumia, I also want a piece. That's the fight. Hiyo ndio maana watu wanaendanga maandamano. But they tell you that they go to maandamano because of ABCD, at electoral reform, electoral justice. The real reason is not that. The real reason ya hizi maandamano is for a negotiated deal. Wanataka hata hao pia wapore mali ya the people who are paying taxes, the taxpayers' money. You understand? So that's what I'm telling you. So what I'm trying to say is this, ladies and gentlemen. Going to register to vote and voting is only going to guarantee an outcome that Ruto and the Kenyan political class desire. That's the only way they can control the electoral process. That's why they keep on demanding enthusiastically, vehemently, speaking passionately about registering to vote, because they know this skewed, corrupt, compromised process of elections in Kenya is already controlled. It will give the outcome that these political oligarchs in Kenya want. That is what they want. And they can actually come out and hold a press conference and talk about, oh, it was a democratically it was a democratic process when they go to talk in front of EU and all the international community. There's nothing democratic about the electoral process in Kenya. That's where they subvert your will through universal suffrage, so to speak, process. I will repeat again for the people at the back. Elections in Kenya is the sure way, guarantee way, a safe way for the political corrupt oligarchs to guarantee the outcome that they want. If we are to invoke Article 1, subsection 2, where we express ourselves, our sovereign power directly, like the people of Nepal, that is a process that they cannot control. That is a process that they cannot subvert. That is a process that they cannot manipulate, because it will be the people rising up and exercising their power directly through a popular people revolution protest like the one in Nepal. No politician can come and say, vote for me. No politicians can say, hey, let's do this, because the people are now speaking and exercising their sovereign power directly. Ruto will be rendered useless. Gachagua will be rendered useless. Raila will be rendered useless. Uhuru Kenyatta will be rendered useless. Gideon Moi will be rendered useless. Kalonzo will be rendered useless. Martha Karua will be rendered useless. They will have no say as to who we pick and choose to be the interim government for 6 months while we revolutionize the IEBC that will be reflecting the will of the people, carrying out the constitutionally mandated exercise they're supposed to do. That is why they're scared of this Gen Zs going back to the streets. I told you about what Ruto said. Alisema ati endeni mkachukue kura, lakini mjue uchaguzi ni 2027. Implying that don't disrupt anything, his rule between now up to 2027. He wants us to get to mpatie mpaka 2027. So he can have enough time to put, things in place, different mechanisms, so that 2027 ikifika, it's an automatic process that he will be re-elected. 2024 June scared the heck out of Ruto, scared the heck out of all these politicians. Go look at the Babu Owinos and Sifunas who were standing outside the parliament when the Gen Z were outside parliament. Look at how they were shaking in their boots. They were shaking because they had lost their power. They could not control the crowd. Hizi mchezo wa town ambao wanaendeleza, they were scared. Ruto had flown off, alikuwa asigoi sijui wapi, anaenda wapi. Gachagua was nowhere to be seen, in a bunker somewhere. Siku hizi ndiye anajifanyanga ati Gen Z. Wasn't he the one who was videoing himself at 5 a.m. ametoka na walkie-talkie anaingia mbele ya Range Rover ati he's going to deal with Gen Zs. But when the Gen Zs got into CBD, Gachagua was nowhere to be seen. So this is what I'm telling you. To those of you who are thinking like a Menya ati, the ballot is a revolutionary toolkit. It's not. It is never. There's no revolution that has ever taken place through the ballot. That is a lie. A bold-faced lie. There's no revolution in the history of revolution. There's none that has succeeded through the ballot box. It is usually the people taking matters in their own hand and saying we shall exercise our power, our will directly by firing whoever the oligarchs of the day, the corrupt oligarchs of the day. Now, the second issue that I want to tackle here very quickly is this issue of borderless Africa. This is the biggest nonsense, a globalist agenda that is being presented to Africans, and it is dressed up as a pro-African action. Let us have a borderless Africa. What a bunch of nonsense. It is the colonizers who came in 1885 in Africa, landed in Africa, and wakakuja na hizi borders. True, technically it's true, but it's also not accurate. There were borders in Africa before the colonizers landed in Africa. I'll say that one more time. We did not call them borders before the Europeans came in. We call them boundaries. Africa was not borderless before the European colonizers landed in Africa. Let me be very clear. Africa was not borderless before Europeans landed in Africa. We had boundaries. The Zulu kingdom knew where it started and where it ended. Name any famous kingdom in Africa. It had there were boundaries of where it started and where it ended. If you read about the Maasai, okay, the Maasai kept on, they always got involved in conflicts with other tribes. Why? Because they were grazing and moving around. They did not stay in one place. So while they were moving from one place to the other, they would come across the Kuria, for example, okay? Or the Kikuyus, or whatever the case is, another ethnic group, okay, who had their boundaries. And they would either sit down and negotiate where these Maasai will graze, or there would be a conflict between the two. There are boundaries. Listen to me. This idea of borderless world, borderless Africa, this is the same thing that started at the Tower of Babel. This is the same thing that did what? Started at the Tower of Babel. That's why God brought confusion and divided nations as it did. There's importance in having boundaries and borders. There is importance. It is important to have boundaries, and not only boundaries, but strong boundaries and borders. Okay? Good neighbors have strong what? Fences or boundaries or borders, so to speak. Okay? This whole globalist agenda of having a borderless Africa, or a borderless world for that matter, is occultic in its inception. Like I told you, it starts from the Tower of Babel, when the people revolted against God and they wanted a one world where everybody spoke the same, acted the same, and worshipped the gods of that time, who are the demons. You understand what I'm saying? And this is the same thing they're trying to rebring it again in the world. That's why you hear about this borderless Neo. We want to have a cashless society. It will be easy to control the masses, the people, if they don't have border, if they have a cashless society, because it is easy to manipulate them. The media that is run is not run by them. You see? So that's why I'm telling you, do not listen to anyone who comes in and tells you a borderless Africa. That is a globalist stooge, like Julius Malema. Julius Malema is a sellout. I've been telling you this. I know you might not agree, but go do your research. He was paid by the Queen of England. And you hear people like Nelson Amenya again telling you about, oh, borderless Africa. Borderless what? We have to have boundaries. Tribes had boundaries with other tribes. Yes, they intermarried. Yes, they did business together. Yes, they coexisted peacefully. But there were times when people had war. Why did they have war? Because they wanted to establish boundaries. You understand what I'm saying? So let's not buy into this globalist UN agenda of a borderless world, cashless world, all this stuff. We have to have strong boundaries. Kenya has to say Kenya, even though the British came and demarcated the eastern region of Africa. That's okay. We can still live as we live, even if we are within Kenya. We still know the regions. We know this is Masai land. We know this is Kikuyu land in central. We know this is Nyanza where Luos are, the Kurias are, the Kisis are. We still know where the northeastern are, where the Somalias are, and Rendile and all this stuff. We know where the Turkanas are. We know where the coastal region are, where we have the Arabs and all. We see we have boundaries. They're different. There's a reason why God created us in different races, different languages, different ethnicity. There's a reason. It's the uniqueness, individuality that we have as individuals and also as a people, as a community. Okay? So let no one come here and they tell you that we need to have a borderless continent in order for us to thrive. That is a bunch of baloney. We can have strong borders and still cooperate. I mean, just think of it. We have different nations like China, US, and Russia. You'll find Black people in that nation. You'll find white people in that nation. You'll have Asian people in that nation. Okay? Even though they have different races, background, and cultures, they still cooperate. They do business together. They live peacefully side by side. And they thrive while appreciating their own natural ethnic background. Okay? You have to preserve your uniqueness that God gave you. So this idea of a borderless Africa is a baloney. It comes from the UN. It's occultic in its nature. They want to take us back to the Towers of Babel. Go read about that story in the Bible for those of you who are Christians and even all Muslims or whatever the case is. Go read it. And if you don't understand it, go ask your pastor, somebody who knows about it. See the reason why God brought different languages and confusion and people had different language within them. Okay? Go do your research. Now, last but not least, because I don't want to stay here long, I wanted to say something about Kenya. The reason, and this ties to the reason why we need a revolution. I often tell this, and I say this in majority of my videos. The number one problem in Kenya is lack of law enforcement. The laws are not taken seriously. The laws are not supreme in Kenya. People pick and choose regarding on who this law applies to. There are people who are considered above the law. Uhuru Kenyatta should be in jail, prison, Kodiaga. Raila should be in Kodiaga. Gachagua should be in Kodiaga. What is his name? Babu Owino should be in Kodiaga. All of these people. Martha Karua. All of them. Matiangi. These people should be in committee. But the law is being used sparingly, depending on who you are. And that's why it gives room for these corrupt oligarchs. That's why I always go hard on the Safina party when they come in and they tell us about how they are going to deal with debt and all these wonderful things. But the number one problem is that the country, Kenya, does not value its laws, respect or enforce its laws. Look at Singapore. the one that you guys like talking about. Look at the United States of America. Look at China. Look at Russia. These powerful countries that have some level of success, advanced economies, so to speak. Okay? Look at how the society is structured. Look at how they govern themselves. Now, I'm not saying that there's no corruption in these countries. Does corruption exist in the US? Yes. Does corruption exist in Russia? Yes. Does corruption run in China? Yes. But what is the degree in which it exists? It doesn't exist to the extent where the economy is crashing because of corruption. Okay, might argue, some might disagree with me on that, especially America, but that's a different story. China, the same thing. Singapore, go look at his interview, that president, I forgot his name, that revolutionized that country. It was the laws that they introduced, rules, laws that had to be respected. The law was above everyone. Even if you think about it, for those of you who are of Christian faith, how does God describe himself? In the beginning was what? The beginning was God. There was the Word, and then the Word was God. And what? The Word became flesh. What was the Word? The Word itself is not only just gospel, the Word is also law. Okay? It is also law. And the law sits supreme. That's why God is law in himself. He is gospel, but he's also law. And he sits supreme. He's a supreme being. He stands above, far above anybody and everybody. Every living thing, spirit or physical thing. You understand what I'm saying? So if you see the successful countries, economies, advanced economies, so to speak, whether it's China, Russia, USA, Germany, or whatever the case is, look at their laws and how they respect, the level of respect or how seriously they take their laws. You can't just walk in the streets and throw your trash, your garbage on the road. You can't just stop by the road and start pooping beside the road. Okay? You can't just misappropriate public funds and think you can get away with it. In China, if you do that, they will execute you. And they've done so. It was just last month that they executed a minister through hanging. You see, in these advanced economies, they take their laws seriously. It is not a matter of jokes. Ati Sonko anaenda hapo and ana plead is not guilty, then the next day unasikia ati there's no enough evidence. What are you talking about? Now this year kuna evidence hapo that points clearly that this guy is corrupt and is involved in some shady deals. I just had somebody who testified against Sonko. Amepata kwa alikufa. But anyway, that's the story for another day. But you see what I'm saying? That's why I usually keep on saying the number one problem in Kenya is that we do not value, respect the rule of law. The Constitution to us is a piece of paper that is supposed to be used on some people, applies to some people, and does not apply to the president and his cohorts in the political class. If you are rich, it does not apply to you. You understand what I'm saying? So the reason why Kenya needs a people's popular revolution is not to re-elect these same Gideon Mois, Railas, sijui Karuas, Musyokas, Jimmy Wanjigis, Gachagua, Matiangi, and all these nonsense people, useless people. The reason why we need a popular people's revolution in Kenya is to get back to the constitution, because a popular revolution is enshrined in our constitution in Article 1, subsection 2, where the people can exercise their power directly. The revolution is the last bullet, because these representatives that we've picked, whether it's the judiciary, the executive, or the legislative, have all failed. And to counter what Amenya was saying, yes, Amenya, the ballot revolutionary toolkit that you're referring to, we have tried that before. We tried it in 2007, we tried it in 2013, we tried it in 2017, we tried it in 2022, we tried it in 1997. Never worked. We are still in the same spot. We've exhausted the ballot way. And these representatives are telling us with bold faces that they are not going to act at our interest. They're not going to act on our behalf. They are not going to represent us. They are going to represent their mafia bosses, the Railas, the Rutos, the Uhurus, the Matiangis, the Gachagwas. They're not going to work for the Kenyan people. So in the event that happens, which is the case in Kenya, we do not need to go and register to vote and wait till 2027 so that we can do what? Vote a Jimmy Wanjigi, who is part of the problem. Vote for Raila Odinga, who is part of the problem. Vote Gachagua, who is part of the problem. Vote for Matiangi, who is part of the problem. Vote for Karua, who is part of the problem. Vote for Kalonzo, who is part of the problem. No. We do not need to register to do nothing. We need to get together and go to the streets and demand that all these people are fired, and the historical injustice that has been committed by these very people, they should be brought to account for that. The land that they stole, I hear Okiom Tata and some dimwits that are talking about redistribution of land will not help Kenyans. Are you kidding me? That land is not going to bring economic growth. What do you know? China, Russia, USA, all these places, even Burkina Faso now, why is it growing? Because of land. They're using the land to produce. They're using the land to extract minerals that they can use to sell, buy, and do that and bring the development. It can create industries. Okay? It is the land that God gave. That's why God in the Bible talks about, I will bless your land or I'll curse it. Okay? Why? Because the land is the very thing that actually, the engine of the economy. What does your land have? Even in the deserts. If you go to Dubai was a desert. If you go to Sahara, Libya, it's a desert. But even a deserted place, the land itself, even if it's a desert, it produces oil that revolutionized Dubai, revolutionized Iraq back then before it was bombed. Libya under Gaddafi. Land, if you look at the United States, agriculture, everything, the minerals, the natural gas, Russia, the same thing. China, the same thing. It's the land that is the heartbeat, the backbone of any economy, what you can produce from the land. How can you use the land to actually turn it into an industry that can create employment and feed the people and have the people do business with other countries? It is the land. So for all of you dimwits like Okiom Tata who are talking about the distribution of land will not help people, you need to go hang yourself. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just a chatterbox. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is what I'm trying to say. A people's revolution has to happen. It's the only solution in Kenya right now. It is constitutional. It is not illegal. It is constitutional. We go out there. Go look at Nepal. That is the perfect recent example of how to do things. Google. I won't tell you what happens there. Go there and see. And it was the Gen Zs. And it was 3% of the population that did it. So Nelson Amenya and others who are telling you the ballot box is a revolutionary toolkit, it's either you are seriously dumb or you're deceiving the people and you're paid. You cannot be serious. We shouldn't get into 27. There have to be a people's revolution to take out Ruto. Not only Ruto, the rest of these idiots that are pretending that they're running for president. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kenyan. Revolutionary. Take a minute to subscribe, share, like, comment, and do the good stuff. Okay? If this is your first time and you don't know who I am, I talk about Kenyan politics and the world politics as it relates to Kenya. So if you like that kind of content, subscribe, like, share, comment, do all the good stuff. If you've already subscribed, you know the first order of business is to do what? Like the video. And make sure that bell button is on. So every time I come in, you know what's up, right? All right. I'll see you guys next time. Peace and blessings. I'm out.